Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fabricio with Deb podcast, or the Fair One podcast. I have with us the fearless Sam here as well to do the stats, the lies, the dirty lies, and the statistics. And we will be talking about the main event, but also trying to answer any questions that people might have about any of the other questions, any of the other fights that are going on that night. And we'll do our best to have a chat about it. Obviously, it's open Discord. It's not necessarily just our opinions. We do try and back it up with some statistics. That is Sam's background. He's a stats man. And so, yeah, we're going to go with that to begin with. All right. So let's kick off with answering some of these questions. Jordan Martinez says, if Volk chooses to fight on the outside and attempts to outpoint Ilya over 5 rounds, what game plan do you see Topuria trying to implement in order to counter this? And then Kenzo says, if Volk attempts to be the aggressor and fight on the inside, how would or should Ilya counter this? And is this dangerous considering how hard Ilya hits, plus a quick turnaround from the KO? I think that the way that this fight's going to go is Ilya's going to pressure forward and Volk might try and meet him in the middle, but I think the Volk is a more complete striker and is, from what I've seen, the better fighting off the back foot. So if it comes down to that, I don't see Volk just standing in the middle of the octagon and, swinging haymakers. I see him fighting off the back foot because I think that Ilya is going to try and pressure him and probably win the battle early on. Volk's got a lot of experience fighting over 5 rounds, and I think that's going to come to benefit here. That isn't to say that Volk can't finish him early. But I think that the way that this is going to go, ironically for the Matador, I believe that Volk's going to be the Matador. You know what I mean? I don't know. And Ilya is going to be the bull. I don't know if Ilya is going to be able to finish Volkanovski. I don't know if Ilya is going to get the win because Volkanovski is very slick. What do you think, Sammy? Sammy.
So you're
hello?
breaking up for me then? Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was just breaking up for a bit. What was your question?
I'll just move on and I'll go to the next one. Max Jamil says, considering Volk attempted to take Islam down, surely he must feel confident in taking down a 145er. If he uses a grappling game plan, how does grappling match up with Ilya? From what I've seen, Ilya is very good, but both of these guys are very good on top. You know what I mean? They're both very good on top. They have similar builds. They're both very good grapplers. Ilya's got a Greco-Roman background, as well as a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's a very, very complete grappler. And Volkanovski's a very complete grappler too. I think out of these two guys, it's going to be whoever gets on top. That's my opinion there. I don't know how much either one of these guys is going to really push. It's going to depend as well, because which one of these guys is going to be able to push the action to push the other guy back. Because I don't see them having like a folk style or freestyle wrestling match in the middle of the octagon. I don't really see that happening. I see whoever can pressure the other guy towards the periphery of the octagon, put his back on the cage. I see the aggressor shooting there, the double legs. So like I said, I think either one of these guys is very good on top. I think either one of these guys is really hard to control when they're on the bottom. I don't know what their jiu-jitsu game is. I don't think either one of these guys is Charles Oliveira off his back. Jordan Martinez says, do you think Ilya will or should attempt to take Volk down in order to shock or surprise Volk? I don't think he'll shock or surprise him. And like I said, if he pushes him towards the cage, I expect that he will try and take him down. Kenzo says, can Costa replicate Duplessis step in with a jab to counter Rob's attempted blitz? DDP and Cannonier both did it to Rob, and Costa hits hard enough to replicate them. Thoughts? The problem there is I don't think it's got to do with how hard Costa hits. It's got more to do with the timing and the fluidity of his strikes. And Costa doesn't have that kind of striking necessarily. He's very much a meat and potatoes, step forward brawler. I do think he's going to try and do things to stop the blitz. So either throwing front kicks up the middle, sitting behind that jab as much as he can. But he's going to try and push Rob back as much as he possibly can, because it's a hard way to fight for 15 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever. It's a hard way to fight moving backwards. Having said that, especially early on, it's going to be very hard to deal with because Rob's a much, much faster and better striker, much more versatile than Costa. Like, it's not, that isn't close, you know what I mean? So this is going to be a big problem for Costa early on in the fight because honestly, at the start of the fight, I think it's going to be like there's 3 guys in there with Costa. That's my opinion. Max Jamil says, Rob and Costa have common opponents in Izzy and Romero. So what are your takeaways from both of their performances against Izzy and Romero? It's hard to say, man, because they fought these guys at different times too. I think that in both Rob's fights with Israel, Rob, he got caught in the first fight, but he like the narrative that was said about that fight is completely stupid. You know what I mean? When people, oh, he's just running in. He tried to pressure Israel and Israel caught him. This could have happened to Strickland. This could have happened easily, but it didn't. And then everyone's singing Strickland's praises. So different kind of pressure, but still the same. Whereas Costa was like completely outclassed by Israel, like completely outclassed by Israel. And I never really saw that with either one of Rob's fights against Israel. I didn't see Israel completely outclass Rob in either fight. They were both very, very close fights until Rob got caught at the end of the first. And even then he still came back in the first fight, second round, and he got caught, man. This happens. This is prize fighting at the highest levels, and Israel's no fucking joke. But Israel and Costa, in that particular fight, Costa was massively outclassed. And against Romero already was now a little bit older, like he's about 42, 43 years old in that fight. This is old for a fighter, dude. And he'd already had broken orbitals from Rob's fight. It was a different Romero. It was definitely a different Romero. So I can't really take a lot from it. But where I can take a lot from that fight is if you look at his fight with Vettori. Vettori beat Costa, and Vettori doesn't belong in the octagon with the better guys in that division. And I like Costa and I like Vettori, but I think in a different setting, neither one of those guys would be in the top 5, maybe not even the top 10 in a different setting. Like say, for example, when the middleweight division had merged with Strikeforce and you had all the Strikeforce dudes and all the UFC dudes and some of the Pride guys still there, like they wouldn't be in that top 5, top 10. They just wouldn't do it. Whereas Rob, you could pretty much in any era, in any organization, put him in and he's in the top 5 and he's one fight away from the title. Or you could just put him straight into a title shot with anyone in any organization at any given time. He is really, truly one of the best ever, in my opinion. So I think it's big difference, man, in the two guys. Like that isn't to say that Costa can't win. There are some things Costa can do to win. But unless I'm massively mistaken, I can't see Costa beating Rob. That's just me. Aljamain Sterling, for the most part, outgrappled Cejudo. Surely Merab will be able to do the same or similar thing, considering his ridiculous cardio plus Henry's old age. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to keep someone that's going to keep coming forward like that. It's hard to keep them off you. But Cejudo's level of grappling, of wrestling, and of fighting in general is very, very high. So when it's that high of a level, the adjustments that you can make, that you can play with, are quite broad. You know what I mean? So he's got the abilities to be able to change and fix things. It's not like he's, oh, fuck, I don't know what to do. He's a very, very high level guy. So yes, Merab could do that, but I don't know if he will. Kenzo says, will Cejudo's karate stance make it easier for the single leg for Merab, a bit like when Khabib fought Conor? I think that Henry's going to be ready for the wrestling of Merab, and I think he won't have a problem defending that single leg, if you want me to be honest with you. Oliver Ekman says, what's up, Ekman? And Thrillhouse says, the Silver Fox. Oliver Ekman comments on my beard once again and says that beard is gorgeous. Cooper Marion says, what's cracking, Fab? Feel like Volk's kicking game and feints are going to win him this over the distance. I agree. I do agree with that. If it goes that way, and the only thing is if Ilya can push him back. If Ilya can push him back, it's hard to kick off the back foot. But Volk's very good, man. I'll do one and then we'll kick off. Oliver Ekman says, are there any women's fights we can bet on? If you want to bet on the lightest woman, on the lightest women's fight you can find, and bet that it will go the distance. Rob McKenzie says, morning Fab, morning Sam. And B Johnson says, I had the same fear with Yair Rodriguez, and Volk went and handled him. I get it that Topuria is a much different fighter, but Volk's one of the best tactical geniuses we've ever seen. I think that Volkanovski is the better fighter of the two out of Ilya and Volk. I think he's technically the better fighter. Is tomorrow going to be the young man's game? I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. But I think technically he's the better fighter. And by a fair margin. With Yair, I didn't even watch that fight live. I thought Volk was going to fucking ice him, and he did. Harry DeLuca says, I think Volk will pump Topuria. That is very insightful, Harry. Harry, last week, by the way, guys, entered a competition. It was a white belt, but he won a bracket of 27 people. 27 people. He won the whole thing. All right, let's kick off, and I will come back and answer more of these questions. Sammy, do you want to hit us? Hello, Sam. Sam. We've lost Sam, people. We have lost him. Cooper Marion says, I think Ilya might get his leg kicked off. Feel like everyone forgot about the first Max Holloway fight where he tore apart a much better boxer for 5 rounds with counter low kicks a lot on the back foot. Look, I don't want to speak too much about some of those fights because whilst he did kick the shit out of Max, he did get caught. You know, I was going for Volkanovski pretty hard. Like, I know Volkanovski since he was a little kid, so I'm always cheering for him, you know. But I don't think it was that one-sided either, that fight. You know what I mean? The fights with Max. He did get a lot in, don't get me wrong, but fuck, it's a tough one. One sec. Sammy says only I can add him. I'm gonna add him to stage. Hey, how are you, mate?
Go. I'm on. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us? Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Easy.
All right. Give me 1 second. I'll just answer a couple more while you get ready. So yeah, that's my take on that. Like, I don't think he's definitely going to go for that, but I think that Ilya probably definitely carries more power than Holloway, and that changes things. You know, that does change things. I do believe that that's going to probably allow him to dictate that a little bit more. But Volkanovski's a fucking handful, dude. Like, he is a handful. Let's see. SG says, what do you think VI path to victory will be? Who's VI? Heath Perry says, if you're going to pick a multi on the main, who are you picking? I'm picking Jeff Neal, Whitaker, and Volk. I think Jeff Neal is good value. Look, I'm not going to give any betting advice. We're going to go through the Ilya and Volkanovski stats in a second, and we'll see how that goes. I don't see Costa beating Rob. I just don't see that happening. I just see Rob being way too fast, and like I said before, and it sounds like I run Costa down, but I don't. I just don't see him and Vettori and Delice top elite guys. I don't really see that. That's my opinion. So yeah, and Jeff Neal versus Ian Gary B. Johnson. I see. I don't know, because I haven't really seen Ian Gary tested. I've seen Jeff Neal tested. I've seen him against Shavkat, and I was fucking impressed. I've seen him against some really good heavy hitters, and I'm impressed. But I haven't seen Ian Gary properly overcoming adversity a lot. I haven't seen that, so I can't. He's a bit of a, like, for me to give an educated kind of opinion, I can't. That one's hard. What do I think Volk's path to victory will be? I think he's going to, if he wins, I think he's going to be too slick. I think he's going to just have way too many weapons. He's going to, hit the body, hit the legs, just way too much. Jim, you champion. Look at this guy. Thank you so much, Jim. You're a real gentleman, mate. Thank you so much. My kids will eat. They will share one packet of Maggi noodles between them. Thank you so much. Cooper Marin says, I'm not going to lie, I rewatched it recently And the first one is pretty close to a shutout. Max just couldn't really get going since he couldn't work his jabs and right hands. I agree when you watch the fight back. I do. I was going for Volkanovski when I was watching it. But it's different when you watch a fight and you know the result. It really is. Like when you watch, say, for example, Dricus and Strickland, when I was watching it live, I thought Sean won, and I thought he won pretty clear. But I thought it was closer than when I rewatched it, because when I rewatched it, I thought Sean clearly won. That's just my thing. SG says Rob looks bigger than before. I don't know. Like he's looks pretty much like he's getting bigger. Bo, like as in older, more mature. Bo Rose says Volk only loses if he does a massive mistake. So does Rob. Yeah, I think that they should both win. That's my opinion. Jim says, how do you see Kopylov Hernandez going? Sorry if you already spoke about it. I haven't. I think Kopylov, you can't sleep on him. He can crack. He can really, really crack. And I think he's been training in the Caucasus for his wrestling, from my understanding. And so hopefully that will have helped him improve his grappling. And I've seen him improve a little bit. If not, Hernandez is going to put the diesel engine on him and beat him. That's how I see it going. If not, if Kopilov's wrestling's improved, fuck, he's going to be a handful. He's going to be a handful for anyone. All right, let's do it, Sammy.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll go to slide one.
Yeah, so this is an overall comparison. Volkanovski lands more total strikes. He lands more significant strikes, over 50% more than Topuria per round. He lands more head, body, and leg strikes and lands with higher accuracy across all metrics. So, and we'll get into it a bit further as well, but, significant strikes, average per round, Volk's landing at around 30. Ilya's landing at around 20. So, he's landing 50% higher than Ilya as well. Head strikes, Volk's landing about 19 per round. Ilya's landing about 15. So Volk lands more head strikes. Strikes to the body are fairly even. So Volk lands like a little bit higher on average. Ilya's only landing 3.1 on average. Leg strikes are another clear differentiator, with Volk landing like almost 8 leg strikes per round. Ilya's only landing like just under 2 leg strikes per round. When you look at the accuracy as well, total strikes, Volk lands at around 60%. Ilya only lands at around 50%. Strikes to the head, Volkanovski is landing about 50%. Ilya is only landing about 42%. Body and leg strikes also favor Volkanovski in terms of accuracy.
Yeah, I think overall, like, Volk's just got more weapons, more everything, to be honest with you. That's my take on that. Next slide. Should we go, Semi?
Yeah. So just in terms of like their kind of game plan and overall, like how they throw their strikes and where what they aim for, focusing on the first 3 rounds as well, as Topuria has only been in the 5th round once. Volk has a higher work rate in terms of striking. He attempts 30, 37, and 44 head strikes over the first 3 rounds. And this is compared with Topuria with only 28, 30, and 44. It does jump up to that one fight that went to the 5th round. He attempted 90 head strikes in that 4th round, but it's a bit of an outlier. Volkanovski focuses on the head and then the legs, where Topuria mainly focuses only on the head. Volk is consistently increasing his output as each round progresses as well.
So even if it goes, the longer it goes, Volkanovski gets stronger and more accurate. Would that be fair, Sammy, to say?
Yeah. So we can get into the accuracy in that afterwards as well. But just in terms of like what he actually attempts, like he attempted normally on average in round 1, just looking at head strikes, he's attempting 30, round 2, 37, round 3, 44. So he's consistently building. Topuria does as well. Like he attempted 28 on average in round 1, 30 in round 2, 44 in round 3. So they are kind of similar on that head strikes, but the leg strikes and the strikes of the body are also a big differentiator. So Volkanovski lands on average almost 10 leg strikes in round 1 and round 2 and 11 in round 3. So whereas Topuria is only landing 2 to 3 on average for the first 3 rounds. Body strikes as well. Round 1, Topuria generally puts it on the body as well. So he's, like 9 body strikes on average per round in round 1, whereas Volk is a little bit, obviously a bit less at like just under 5 body strikes. But then round 2 and 3, Volkanovski keeps the same profile. So he's still striking to the body and to the legs. Whereas Topuria drops off, though he lands on average 9 body strikes in the first round. And then the rounds 2 and 3, he only lands 2 to 3 body strikes per round.
All right. Well, moving right along, I was just going to say on that, I do think that that's going to be like just the variety of strikes and the angles and the footwork that Volkanovski has. It's similar to the Costa and Whitaker fight. Like Rob's hand speed and feet are too fast for Costa, way too fast. That isn't to say Costa can't win, but I just don't see how. You know what I mean? I just honestly don't see how. And it isn't like he's got that one shot in Ngannou power, because he doesn't have those knockouts on the roster versus the top end guys. You know, he just doesn't. You know, it just does not. Sammy?
Yeah, so so just Volkanovski lands more strikes on average per round as well. Before we're looking at the strikes that he was attempting, Volk lands more head, body, and leg strikes over the course of the first 3 rounds. He increases his output and connects more as each round progresses. It's mainly driven by head strikes as he increases the rate at which he lands each round. So round 1, he normally lands 14, round 2, 19, round 3, 23. His body and leg strikes remain relatively stable with only slight increases each round, but it's consistent. Whereas Topuria does increase head strikes round on round, but only from 10 to 14 to 16. Topuria lands more body strikes in the first round and then drops off dramatically in the second and third.
I'll also say this, in my opinion as well, those stats are taken obviously over a longer career, but against much better competition than Ilya has faced. So Ilya hasn't faced that level of competition, and he's had a lot less fights, and Volkanovski's averages are still way higher. So that is very telling in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that, Sammy?
Yeah, someone commented on that before as well, and asked a question about that. And like totally, when you look at that, what's like Josh Emmett fought for the interim belt and lost it to Yair Rodriguez, and that was Topuria's last fight. He I rewatched that the other day. He cleanly won it. But it still went to decision, and he couldn't put Emmett away either. It came close in a few of the rounds, but he couldn't put him away either. So
he did beat the shit out of him though, like pretty bad. Would have been better for Emmett's. Yeah, it would have been better for Emmett's health if they'd just stopped the fight.
Look, a couple of 10-8 rounds, but he still couldn't.
Yeah. What have we got here, Sammy?
Yeah, so just in terms of efficiency and accuracy, it definitely still favors Volk. So Volk has a head strike accuracy for the first 3 rounds of 45%, 50%, and 52% on average. And Topuria is much lower at 37, 48, and 35%. Body striking accuracy favors Volk, 66%, 74%, 71%, compared to Topuria with only 61, 64, and 60%. So Volk's higher, he's more efficient, he lands more often, and he has better accuracy. So combining those previous slides as well, yeah, Volk attempts more strikes. He lands more strikes with higher accuracy than Topuria for the first 3 rounds. The only one is probably the leg strikes in round 1. The accuracy is slightly higher for Topuria, but he doesn't throw as many either.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so Volk attempts more strikes from distance, so more strikes standing up, the clinch, and from the ground over the first 3 rounds. Volk increases his output for each area of striking each round as the fight progresses, whereas Topuria's output drops in the second, increases again in the third. In the third round, Topuria has a slightly higher work rate than Volkanovski in strikes from distance, but in the same round has much less strikes in the clinch and on the ground as well. there's a couple of those outliers you can see on round 4 and round 5 where Topuria's only had that one fight that's gone that distance with Josh. So
right. And Volkanovski lands more strikes from distance, the clinch, and from the ground over the first 3 rounds. And that's mainly where most of Topuria's fights have been, and Volkanovski's have been from 5 rounds, and still Volkanovski outlands him in the first 3 rounds. So I think that's a very, very telling thing as well, like to look at, because it's not like you're comparing like 3 rounds for 3 rounds. You're comparing a guy that's fighting 5 rounds and still outpacing you over 3 when you fight predominantly over 3 rounds. Anything you want to say on that, Sammy?
No, you pretty much covered it.
And then we have slide 8, says Volkanovski again has higher accuracy over the first 3 rounds across all areas of position in striking. So accuracy by position for both these guys, that's the distance, the clinch, and the ground. Do you want to speak on that, Sammy?
Yeah, so just for the first 3 rounds for Volk, he's has an accuracy of 49%, 54, and 56 respectively, whereas Topuria only lands at a rate of 41, 44, and 39%. Accuracy in the clinch and ground strikes also favors Volk overall, with Topuria having higher accuracy in ground strikes in round 2, but he also just didn't throw or land as many ground strikes as Volkanovski as well. So it's also looking at. It's like the accuracy is the number of strikes that he's landed divided by the number of strikes that he's attempted. But if he hasn't attempted that many or hasn't actually landed that many, like he can have a slightly higher accuracy, but he even hasn't thrown as many either. So,
right. And then we have overall round by round, Volkanovski lands more strikes on average across all metrics of target and fight position. Do you want to talk to that, Sammy?
Yeah, so when I actually put this together too, I just put the axes as exactly the same. So you can see the stark difference between the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So Volk lands more significant strikes on average. In that first round, he on average lands about 24, second round 31 and 36 for the third round, with Topuria only landing 18, 17 and 19, almost 50% less than Volkanovski. The only metric that kind of favors Topuria across all of it is submission attempts, where he's attempted at least 1 per round for the first 3 rounds.
Which is interesting, but it's going to be very hard to get Volkanovski on the ground. You know what I mean? This is going to be not easy at all. And then once he's on the ground, you got to hold him down. Then you got to look for a submission. I don't think there's a lot of difference in their jiu-jitsu ability in MMA, to be honest with you. I don't really favor one or the other. I'd be surprised if Ilya ragdolls Volkanovski. I don't see that. Anything else on it?
No, just to reiterate that, I suppose, as well, like in that first fight with Islam, obviously the second fight's totally different, but that first fight with Islam did take him down. He was able to kind of control him in that, at least for those, first round, and that is first and fourth round. Yeah. And he was able to take his back in that, but he still wasn't able to submit him either. So
yeah,
he
absolutely.
didn't really seem to be looking for it either, but he also just wasn't in the position for it. So.
All right. So where's your money bet there, Sammy? Who you betting on?
Volkanovski, and I probably would do it anyway. But he is the betting favorite. So, yeah.
Yeah, he's minus 130 favorite, and I would definitely put my money on him. I think the odds makers have that correct. Whitaker is minus 225 and Costa's plus 185. Honestly, I think Rob's that's probably even good money. I would say Rob should be probably 3-1 favorite. My opinion. I don't know about Ian Machado versus Jeff Neal being minus 225. I don't know that Ian's that much better. It's going to be interesting. Devashili's a minus 210 favorite. Hernandez a minus 205 favorite. Lemos is minus 140. It's interesting. The guy to watch in this card, in my opinion, is Nakamura. He's like just a freak, man. He's an absolute freak. He's basically got the same credentials or very, very similar credentials to Bo Nickel in wrestling. So this guy's a guy to watch. He's fighting Carlos Vera in the bantamweight division. Rinya Nakamura's wrestling is a sight to behold. He is a very, 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 very high level wrestler. Let's answer a few of the questions. Sorry if I skip you guys, if I skipped a few. So it says, what are your thoughts on Junior Tuffer being the real baddest player and stepping up on 1 day's notice? Justin is out with a knee injury. I'm going to tell you guys something that is a good piece of advice that will probably help you later in life in any kind of setting, no matter what kind of job you do. This is, don't pick fights with giant Polynesians. This is all I have to say. And so this guy being a giant Polynesian that is super well trained, I don't think it's a good fucking thing. Like, I would assume that he's a very, very bad man to begin with. That's my advice on that, on any of the Tougher brothers. B. Johnson says, Costa just doesn't have the fight IQ. When his game plan of overwhelming guys can't happen, he looks lost. Yes, I agree. I think and that's also what I was going to say with the Romero fight. In the Romero fight, Romero likes the chaos. Romero likes to get in there and bang it out. Romero is not a very technical striker. He's a very explosive, freakish athlete, and the two of them can go toe-to-toe like that. Whereas with guys that are tidy with their stand-up, it's a different story. And Rob's several classes above Costa with his stand-up. Several classes above. Cooper Mary. Well, so Sammy, what's your take on any of the other fights that I said, that, like, say, Rob versus Costa?
Yeah, so just in terms of the stats, obviously, like the average per round, it actually does slightly favor Costa. It obviously depends on their opponents and that as well, but Rob's landing around 21 significant strikes on average per round. Costa's landing 28. Head strikes super similar. Rob's landing 14.6 on average head strikes. Costa's landing 14.7. The body strikes to the body do favor Costa. He's landing on average 11.5, and Rob only has 2.4. But the leg strikes also favor Rob. So Rob typically lands around 4 leg strikes per round, whereas Costa's only landing 1.5 or so on average per round. The accuracy does favor Costa as well. Costa is landing significant strikes at a rate of around 60%. Rob's a lot lower at around 43%. But it also, speaks to how many fights they've got in the UFC as well. I've got, 20 odd fights in the UFC for Rob, and I've only got 8 in here for Costa.
Yeah.
So the
stats, the level of fighter, the level of fight is very different as well. That Rob is compared.
There's definitely some names in that list of Costa. There definitely is some names in that list of Costa, but all towards their tail end of the career, I suppose, except for the Adesanya fight, which he lost anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that, and also I think that even if those stats were like, which are actually very interesting, because no one would think that. I wouldn't have thought that. But I think that when you look at that, it's also the speed and the timing of the shots that are coming from Rob are what is the X factor. Because I don't see Costa being able to put it on Rob. I don't see that. I don't see it at all. Cooper Marion says, I think Hernandez is going to eat Kopylov. I really love Kopilov's style, but just feel like Fluffy is going to be a big old Merab and he's going to run you down eventually. Yes, he really is a diesel. He really is a diesel engine. And if Kopylov, but the one thing I will say, if Kopylov has really improved his wrestling, he's like 32 years old. He's not young. But if he has improved his wrestling, and he is on that side of the world, so he can definitely improve his wrestling to a high degree. But if he's got the power to make you respect him. You're not just going to walk through his shots. He's got a lot of power. He's got a lot of good striking, and that can make your fights, that can make it very difficult for you to come forward. And Hernandez wants to come forward, and he wants to tire you out, and he wants to be the diesel. but Kopylov has power in his shots, and he is skillful. So if he's worked on his wrestling defense and he can keep this fight on the feet, I do think he's going to be able to hurt Hernandez, but I'd have to favor Hernandez. Then we see Hanoi Tripper saying Costa will get frustrated and tired from missing Rob. I think Rob's going to have his way with him. B. Johnson says, I'm liking those leg strike stats because that's the lead leg of Topuria is always open. I think so, yes, because Topuria stands very much in a boxing stance, and Volkanovski is going to smash the shit out of that front leg. And I do think that's going to be the tail of the tape for Rob as well. They're very similar fights. Although I think Topuria is probably a fair bit better than what Costa is. That's no offense to Costa, but I think that Rob's going to smash the lead leg of Costa as well. That's my honest opinion. Hanoi Tripper says, interesting, Volko better stats as Topuria says he has superior boxing. And he might have superior boxing, but this is a different thing because there's other things that Volkanovski can do. And you're also looking at it, it's condensed. Topuria's stats are over a smaller amount of fights and usually over 3 rounds. So it's going to look a little bit better. Beetle just says, I love these breakdowns. We love you watching, guys. Thank you so much for supporting us. My kids eat when people donate money, and Sam gets to put new stuff on his bicycle and stuff like that really help. So thank you, guys. B. Johnson says, I'm guessing Topuria's lesser accuracies because he tends to swing for the fences a lot and overswings a lot. Yes, Ben, it was funny that you say that. And B. Johnson then says, not that he's not a good boxer, but he really does get caught up in the head hunting game a lot. He's terrifying when he mixes up his targets, like with his J. Herbert KO. Yeah, I was going to say this as well, because the stats, a lot of the times, they don't reflect what's happening in real time. You know what I mean? They don't reflect, like, he really goes for the head. You know what I mean? And when he puts the combinations in place and he lands shots to the body, he does look like a very, very dangerous guy. And that's the same with Costa as well. When Costa can put you up against a cage and land some body shots, he starts to look very scary when he mixes up that the boxing and he goes to the body as well. I don't know if this is going to be the case though for both of them. But yeah, he does. The stats don't take that into account. It's the same as when you watch. Well, I do think that Strickland won against Dricus, and I do think that. But watching it live though, when you see Dricus throw those huge shots, when you're watching it live, you're watching it going like that. When you watch it later, you realize the shots didn't land, but you can't separate those two things. That's why you're judging the fight live. And the impact that even missing big shots has to your opponent, where you move him back and he has to be cautious and you're putting him into his shell. All of these things have an impact on how the fight goes. Bo Rowe says, BJJ is useless against a good, strong wrestler like Volk. Yeah, but Topuria is a good, strong wrestler as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting if one of these two guys can put the other one on his back, because then the jiu-jitsu will not be useless. It's just going to depend whether or not they can do it. And Ilya is a good wrestler, so is Volkanovski. So that's going to be interesting. Do you have anything to add, Sammy?
I was just having a quick look at the kind of defense of Whittaker versus Costa as well. And defensively, Whittaker is much better than Costa as well, just in terms of the total stats. Obviously, when I say better, just they've all fought different people and everything else, but you take that aside and just look at their defensive percentages. So Rob has a significant strike for defense in round 1 of 59%, 60% in round 2, 64% in round 3. So his defense gets better and better as the round progresses, as the fight progresses. Costa, though, his significant strike, a lot less at 47% defense, 46% in round 2, 51% in round 3. So he does slightly increase, but much lower. Head strike defense for Costa, 58% in round 1, 52 in round 2, and 56 in round 3. Whereas Rob's at like 71%, 72%, and 71%. So very consistent around that 70 to 72% head strike defense for Rob in rounds 1 to 3.
Yeah, it's a huge difference between the two of them, like a massive, massive difference. And that's what I was saying. Like the speed, the frames at which Rob moves are much faster than Costa's. Much, much, much faster. It's like you're watching someone on double speed, you know. So the footwork and the head movement, he's going to be out of the way. Like it's not. I don't think it's going to be a close fight at all. Like it will look very similar. If Rob doesn't finish him, it's going to look like the Vettori fight. Costa and Vettori, that's their level. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's not the level of the top guys. And Rob's one of the top guys, like I said before. So I don't see it even being close. I'm going to go through the card, right? So I want to go through the main event. Well, I'm going to go down to bantamweight and just say Rinya Nakamura is going to pump Carlos Vera. That's my thing there. But we're going to stay. And if you can, Andrea Lee versus Miranda Maverick, there's a good chance that fight's going to go. That'd be my pick of the card, is that's going to go to a decision. Statistically, there's like a 60% chance that it goes to a decision, and I'd probably bet on that, you know. But I'm not telling anyone to bet. I am not responsible for anyone betting. If I was to bet theoretically, which I do not, I would bet on women's flyweight, Andrea Lee versus Miranda Maverick going to a decision. The odds won't be great, but that's the safest bet. So at middleweight, Anthony Hernandez versus Roman Kopylov. I see this being a close fight. I see Kopylov, if he has improved his wrestling, I see that he does have a good chance of being able to chin Hernandez. Hernandez has had some really good wins, and he's got a win over Brendan Allen by decision in the LFA, but that was back in 2018. But then he's got a couple of losses that I don't like. You know, a couple of losses. One was against Marcus Perez, and the other one was against Kevin Holland. Not that they're not great fighters or good fighters, but they're not the top. Again, they're not the top at middleweight. You know what I mean? And that is a little bit, puts an asterisk next to him. But that isn't to say, look, if you look at his past performances, he beat Edmund Shabazian, which, again, Edmund Shabazian is not the top of the food chain. And he beat him pretty bad in that fight. I remember that fight. He has a win over Marc-Andre Barriault, who's a solid fighter, and he has that by arm triangle choke. Solid. Again, not the best. Decision win to Josh Fremd. Not the best, but okay. Rodolfo Vieira, he beat Rodolfo Vieira by submission. So he did a good job in that fight. It was really good. But I also think Rodolfo has improved since then. That was a pretty early on fight in Rodolfo's career. Matching that with Roman Kopylov. I mean, Roman Kopylov, he beat Josh Fremd too, bashed him. I saw that fight. He beat Claudio Ribeiro as well by a KO head kick. He beat Soriano. Soriano's a heavy hitter. He beat him with just kicked the shit out of his body and punches. I remember watching that fight. And he has a win over Alessio De Chirico over KO. So he's got last 5 in a row have been by KO or TKO. But he has got a loss to Albert Duraev, where he got out-grappled, and Carl Robinson, where he got submitted. I don't like that. But I don't know, out of the two of them, gun to my head, I'd probably go with Anthony Hernandez. He is the favorite. He's got the diesel engine. He may be able to push this fight to the ground. If he pushes the fight to the ground, it's going to be very hard for Kopylov. Who do you pick in that fight, Sammy?
I haven't actually been through all the stats. So,
yeah, just if you had to pick them. What's that?
Yeah, I'd actually have no idea between the two. I haven't watched a single fight between them.
All right. Then we have Merab Dvalishvili versus Henry Cejudo. I think this is an interesting fight to me. I think a lot of people write Henry off. Merab is 33. Henry is 37. He's a little bit older, and especially at bantamweight. I think the lower you are, the more that has an effect. I wouldn't be surprised if Henry gets it done, because I think at the level that Henry is, you can make adjustments. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you can't make adjustments. You can make adjustments. He's got the skills behind him to be able to make the adjustments. And the loss that he had was a split decision loss against the then champion, Aljamain Sterling, one of the better bantamweights to ever do it. So he can definitely make the adjustments. I would not be surprised if he does. Whereas Merab is a bit of a monster in his own right, and he's got nothing but wins since a loss to Ricky Simone, and the last win he's got is against Peter Yan by decision. So I have to go with Merab, but only because he's a little bit younger and because of the style, the relentless style that comes forward. And at bantamweight, it's hard to have someone that has the power to make you respect him to stop coming forward. So I think that we're going to see a Merab win. Sammy, do you have anything to say on that?
The romantic in me is going with Cejudo on this one.
You are? Okay, excellent. Why?
Just experience and everything else. That he's been double champ, Olympic gold medalist. He's come back after he came back after a long time off, and it's not like he'd lost any of his skills either. Like, that was a close fight. So
very good. Yeah, I think so. I do agree with that. But I do think Merab's going to get it done. I'm going for Cejudo, though. Do you know what I mean? I want Cejudo to win. Jeff Neal versus Machado Gary.
I'm going with Ian Gary on this one. Don't know if I want it to happen either, but yeah, I think he would take it.
I will say this. Jeff Neal has a few losses, right? He's got a loss to Neil Magny, which, I mean, Machado Gary beat the shit out of. And he's got a decision loss to Stephen Thompson, who Shavkat beat up pretty bad. And he's got a loss to Shavkat, but that loss to Shavkat, it was a good outing. Then he's got a win over Vicente Luque, who's no joke. And that's a KO win over Vicente Luque. And a split decision win over Santiago Ponzinibbio. And Ponzinibbio is a very, very, very solid striker. Shavkat is no joke either, obviously. I think Shavkat could possibly be welterweight champion if he doesn't move up to middleweight first. I think there's a good chance we see this guy at middleweight sooner rather than later. So whilst I do think Machado Gary is going to get it done, I don't know that it's going to be as easy as people may first think. The problem with him is that I haven't really seen him tested. And I can't say, well, you haven't seen him tested because the guys were just such crazy level. That isn't why. You know what I mean? Daniel Rodriguez fight, I rate Daniel Rodriguez a lot. He's a very tough guy. But again, we're not talking about top of the food chain guy here. And I'm a big fan of Daniel Rodriguez, but he's not ranked in the top 15, so it's a different thing. So I haven't really seen enough to be able to go, yep, that guy. And then Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. Oh, sorry. So who do you have against Machado Gary and Jeff Neal?
I have Gary.
Yeah, I have to go with that too. Whittaker versus Costa.
I have Rob for this. And while I did go through some of the stats before, and, they kind of some aspects do favor Costa just in terms of offense. It's offense against some big names, but yeah, as we said before, kind of at the end of their careers, for some of them. And, he's fought some big names like Adesanya and that as well, but obviously he lost to Adesanya. And just the fact that, while those stats do kind of favor it, there's a lot more. Rob's had a lot more fights in the UFC as well. So the stats are a bit thin, kind of thinned out for him.
Rob's going to massacre him. I think Rob's going to absolutely massacre him. I think it's going to look like the Vettori fight, but Vettori's the most durable fighter possibly of all time in that middleweight division. And Rob couldn't put him away, but no one puts Vettori away anyways. Whereas I don't see necessarily Costa having that durability necessarily that Vettori does. I just don't. And Vettori backed him up and beat him. You know what I mean? So I think Rob's going to massacre Paulo Costa. It's going to be a war crime. It's not going to be pleasant. And then moving right along to the main event of the featherweight division, Volkanovski versus Topuria. Your pick?
Definitely Volk from a stats perspective and just overall as well. Yeah, he's had so many more fights. He's defended his title against big names, whereas Topuria hasn't really. He's obviously hasn't lost, but he hasn't really had any big names on his card either.
I want Volkanovski to win. And I think he is going to win. Based off the stats, Volkanovski looks overwhelmingly better. Based off what you can see, I think Volkanovski looks better. Based off the people he's fought, Volkanovski looks better. Ilya, I haven't, other than the Emmett fight and maybe the Bryce Mitchell fight, I haven't seen him fight anyone that I can really say, wow, he got tested, he came out, he passed the test. I've never seen that, you know. And it's the same with like Costa. I haven't seen really him pass big tests. Other than the Romero fight, I'll give him that. But the Romero fight, again, Romero wasn't Romero anymore, you know, at that stage. You know, I think he lost like 5 fights in a row. You know, it is when you fight a dude as well. Let me just see that, because I'm just interested actually when he fought Romero. I think Romero's lost 1 million fights in a row. So when he fought Paulo Costa, he lost to Rob, beat Rockhold, lost to Rob, lost to Costa, lost to Adesanya, lost to Phil Davis, beat Melvin Manhoof, lost to Alex Polizzi, and lost to Vadim Nemkov. So, like, yeah, this is not the Romero that beat Chris Weidman and the Romero that Rob fought in Romero 1. The Romero that fought Rob in that first fight was an unbelievably really put together fight at that time, you know. Or the Romero that fought Machida, the Romero that fought Weidman, that wasn't the same Romero that Costa fought. So no, I can't say that I could go with Thingo's resume Costa's. And it's the same with Ilya Topuria. Yes, he did well against Bryce Mitchell. Yes, he did well against Emmett. But no, he doesn't have the resume and the body of work that Volkanovski does. So I'm going with Volkanovski. Cooper Marion says, I feel like Volk is going to have old man strength over Topuria in all the grappling, even if Ilya is nearly equal in skill. Yeah, I think, man, it's going to be very hard, because if they're equal in skill and even equal in physicality, like strength, etc. But I do think that Volkanovski's too experienced as well. You know, I think he's too experienced. I think he's been in hard fights. He's lost fights. He's won fights. This is important. This is very important. He's come back from losses. It's important. This all adds up to your experience. Heath Perry says, what's the best card you've seen? I've never seen anything like Merab. Yeah, Merab, Covington. There's stuff like a Frankie Edgar, when people don't understand, like the beating that Frankie Edgar took off Maynard in that fight, and then came back and won. Like, when you're getting bashed like that, that takes your cardio, man. That takes your cardio so bad. You got to be so fit to get through it. Like, yeah, there's some really amazing cardio freaks. Romero's pretty fit, man. Like, people don't understand. Like, he explodes and explodes and explodes, and he's dangerous the whole fight. And he was older too. And Rob himself is a very, very fit guy. Like, you see him in that second Romero fight, like how much those two guys damaged each other and how long they kept going is pretty fucking incredible. Like, so the fitness. Bisping has taken shots and like get fucking rocked and wobbled all over the place and clears his head and keeps going. You know, these are level of fitness that's pretty fucking incredible, especially as he's starting to get up that weight division. Tito Ortiz in his prime was a very, very fit guy for that division, you know, look, for such a big guy. Cooper Marion says, I feel like Salvador, and the difference as well with Merab is that he's dictating that, like he's dictating what's happening with that single leg thing that he does. Whereas once guys start to get hurt, and you really start to see their level of cardio, once they start to get stopped and hurt, and that you really see their cardio. Cooper Marion says, I feel like Salvador Sanchez had some ridiculous cardio, but didn't press as much as Merab and didn't have to grapple or kick. Yeah, well, Salvador Sanchez, different sport though. Xavier Arguello says, do you know a free way to see the fights? Yes. You befriend a group of people, 3, 4, 5 people, 6 people, like Sammy, for instance, and he will pay for the fights. And you kind of say, no, I'm not going to. You don't have to chip in, and be like, I'm not even going to bring dips or chips or anything. And then you kind of just turn up there just before the main event kind of starts, just before the main card starts, like just as about the Hernandez fight's about to start, you just kind of turn up and say, hey, listen, my dog got away and I was chasing it and then I ended up here in your yard. Oh, you're watching the fights, and then you watch the fights, you get to watch it for free. That's the only real way I can think of. Send me any ways to watch the fights for free, any links, anything?
Oh, I got nothing. I'll be paying on KO and everyone else will be doing the same for me.
Oh, so you're going to charge people to watch at your house?
Nah, they'll just be coming and eating all my food.
Bastards, mate, bastards. Cooper Marion says Chingiz Ashasov, but he still takes some time off. Merab takes no breaks, and it's freakish. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, though, when people start to push Merab back. You know what I mean? Because you can push a lot, and this speaks to his skill level as well. It's not just his cardio. You can keep coming and keep coming and keep coming and keep coming as long as you're the one dictating. You know, if somebody takes him down, puts him on his back, etc., this is when it starts to get interesting. You know, when we'll get a good understanding of his cardio. And Cejudo is a guy that can do that. You know, he can put him on his back, so it might be interesting. And he can also do it. Cejudo is one of the few guys, because of his extensive folk style and freestyle wrestling background, he's one of the guys that can do it on the open mat. So he can shoot a double or a single in the open mat and really turn it into a wrestling match himself and put Merab on his back. This could be one of the things that's going to happen, you know what I mean? Because people talk about how does he going to handle that single leg, and he could be the one shooting on Merab in the open mat. You know, I don't know if that's what they're going to do. Cooper Marion says you can just Google MMA streams and it will bring up an aggregator of various stream sites for fights. I am not part of advertising this, by the way, guys. I have nothing to do with it. I am just a simple man trying to get by day. So that's my take on all of those things. That's how I see the fights going. I see them being a massacre for certain people, and yeah, I don't see some of the fights being close, actually, to be honest with you. Cooper Marion says, I think this fight is going to be a scramble fest, however that goes. I think so too, and that's where I say to you, like, it depends. One thing is I'm pushing the pace on you. I'm hitting that single leg, breaking up your rhythm, moving you back, making you fight on the back foot. And this can gas you out, you know, and then that doesn't really tax Merab because Merab trained to do that. Whereas if Cejudo can make him wrestle, not let him be able to rest, or he takes you down and gets on top and holds you down, then he can rest, you know, and then he can just rinse and repeat. But if Cejudo takes him down and starts to hold him down and starts to create and turn this into a folk style, freestyle match, and Merab is having to defend and he's not getting to dictate the timing of the fight, then we're going to see just how fit he is, you know. Anything you want to add, Sammy?
No, not really. Yeah, looks like a good card. It's surprisingly that it has kind of gone through relatively smoothly. Not as many people I thought would have dropped out and been changed. So
my pick for this card to watch for, the guy to look at, and I know I'm always saying stuff, is Rinya Nakamura. Nakamura is 28. He's funny. He's like a bantamweight Japanese Bo Nickel. He's a Japanese mixed martial artist and former freestyle wrestler who currently competes in the bantamweight division. He competes at 61 kilograms. Nakamura became the 2017 under-23 world champion, which is the same thing like Bo Nickel is the under-23 world champion. Big time. He's a big time wrestler, you know. And he was a bronze medalist at the World Cup in 2018, world under-23 champion. I'm pretty sure it was at the same comp as Bo Nickel. And then he was Japanese national championships, which in particular at those weights are no fucking joke. So he was a silver medalist at the 65 kilogram division in 2019, a bronze medalist in 2018, a bronze medalist in 2015, and a world cadets. He was a bronze medalist in 2011. Like, there's serious grappling credentials, a lot of power in his hands. Yes, Cooper Marion, under-23 world champion. He's a fucking serious grappler. I don't know how far he'll go in that division because I don't know. But he does have heavy power in his hands. And fun fact, his father was one of the founders of Shooto, I'm pretty sure. So he's been around it his whole life. He's going to be a handful for anyone in that division. So a real real handful, someone to watch, big power in that bantamweight division. Nakamura, mate, he's out of the whole card, he's the one I want to watch. Of course, I want to watch the Aussies as well, but Nakamura for me is like, if I could invest, I'd invest in him. That'd be like, I'd put a bit of a cheapskate. I'd put $50 on him. Like, what do you call them? Index funds like that. I'd put on Nakamura, Bo Nickel, like a whole bunch of them, and just put like $50 on them. Who Cooper Marin says would be dope to get a Japanese Cejudo. Yeah, he is. He's like that. Archie says, Fab, why are there so few fighters from Japan in the UFC? I don't think MMA, and Sam can speak to this, I don't think MMA is as big in Japan as it was before. I just don't think it's as big. And I do think that the top guys go to judo, and they do judo for judo. Like, it's not necessarily, and judo is different as well. Like, it's a thing, but the top combat guys, like, you're hot shit if you do judo and you're national champion in Japan in judo. But generally, people do that to do that. And so I don't think it's anywhere near what it was like in the heyday with Pride and all of that. It just wasn't. I trained in Japan for about 3 months, 2 months, something like this in 2008, 2009. And even then it was still pretty big, but it was a lot smaller. And I think the Japanese people are little, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're smaller guys, and they're smaller, even like a lot of the Asian fighters, I think, like in ONE FC would do well, but they're smaller. They're smaller guys than like 57 kilos. Yes, okay, that's a pretty small division, but you'd have a lot of guys competing in those divisions, I think. And yeah, I think that a lot of their guys go into that freestyle wrestling as well. But in general, when you do those sports, you do them for those sports. Sammy, do you want to talk on that? Because you were just in Japan now.
Yeah, obviously, I don't know all the ins and outs, but just after talking to you about it and that as well, it does make sense because, if you're in, say, judo national team and stuff like that, the country's invested their time and money into that for you. So, are you going to go out and leave all that to go into the UFC and, just have a bit of a gamble and see how you go? So,
and I think what people don't understand as well, like in Japan and that, like, you could, if you're a high level judoka, it's not just the Japanese Judo Federation that's invested in you. It's also the International Judo Federation that's invested in you. Like, you'll go to a competition, you'll compete, and then they'll have a training camp there with all the best guys in the world. And so if you, like, for example, if you're a national champion, I'm not even talking about Olympic gold medalist in Japan, you're a national champion, or you medaled at the nationals in Japan, and you were good, and you blah, 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 like, you will pretty much be guaranteed, if you somewhat like Cluey, to have a job as a coach or a teacher or something, something in relation to judo. It's a pretty big deal. And I don't know how much. Then you have to also take the percentage out of those guys that started doing judo for judo. How many of them actually want to fight? The numbers would be very small again. And after that, it's like you could also make a healthy living with longevity without having your fucking head punched in. And I don't know, when you finished your career, say 27, 28, if you're guaranteed a job, like a full-time job, solid job, with all the benefits that comes from like coaching judo, do you want to go and fight at the UFC when you're probably going to enter the UFC past your prime? You know what I mean? I think that's probably one of the reasons why, like, same as the Iranians, you don't see a lot of Iranians in the UFC. You don't see a lot of, you probably will later on down the track, maybe, but don't forget the Iranians, the Turks, all of those dudes, they enter wrestling to wrestle. They don't go, I want to fight MMA. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big thing, man. Like, I was in Turkey, and there's dudes that live completely, they just live off oil wrestling. That's what they do full time. Big company sponsors them, and they live off that. They live off oil wrestling, and that's a phenomenon that doesn't even fucking exist anywhere else. Like, maybe in some other countries, but like they live off that. You know what I mean? So, and little kids that get into wrestling, they think, oh, I'm going to be an oil wrestling champion, I suppose, when they're 17, 18 or whatever. So a lot of those guys, like, they don't have to go, or the Senegalese wrestlers and that, Like they make very good coin as well, compared to like you living in Senegal and you're making good money from that. And you're a fucking star, dude. You're huge in Senegal with the Senegalese wrestling. So I think there's a big part of that. Cooper Marin says, I feel like Japanese fighters are drawn to kickboxing or judo. All the Kyokushin transitions super smoothly to J kick. And if you're a good grappler, you would have went to judo. So no MMA. Yeah, judo and wrestling are huge, man. Wrestling as well in Japan. Like the level of the lighter weights in Japan for wrestling is fucking big. You know, it's big. It's high level. So no, I don't think and it's tied up with the university system. It's like I think that's a big reason why, you know, and I think it carries a lot of stigma in Japan, and Japan is a lot about that, even with the younger generations. So I think that's a big one. That is a big one. Cooper Marin says you can grab the dong in oil wrestling, right? That double-handed snake grip. I'm not familiar with that grip, but I will say this because I've competed in oil wrestling, and I will tell you this: they can put their hands down your pants, which is fucking freaky, and maybe never happened to me, but maybe they can grab you. I think that if they did grab me, we would be in a different level of. I would probably stop the match there and then. We're not going to fucking be doing that. But I will say this to you. They can do grips inside the pants, and that fucking freaks you out if you're not into it. Like that's its whole thing. Like the way they grip and everything inside the pants, like there's like pockets that aren't all oiled up, and you can get like a grip, kind of like when you get like the 4 fingers into the gi, and the dudes will pick you up and fucking slam you, dude. They've been doing that since they're little. So yeah, that's Archie says. Archie says, Fab, in one of your podcasts, you wore a T-shirt with Biggie's juicy lyrics. Where can I get the same one? I think my wife bought it for me just off the net. She bought it just off the net, to be honest with you. So if you just Google that, you'll be able to buy it. Thank you for the donation, because we will now. I have 2 kids that will eat because of the first donation. Now the third kid's going to eat. Now my wife and I will probably. I don't know, we'll probably lick the wrapper or something, but everyone's going to eat tonight. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Cooper Marion says, oil fab up. Cooper Marion says, you ever been oil checked, Fab? No, I will not. No, I have never been oil checked. But one of my friends, shout out to Blake Barton, wrestled a guy from Nigeria, all right? Wrestled a guy from Nigeria. I don't know what comp it was at. Fuck, I'd have to ask Blake, but Blake's real good grappler. He's ranked number 1 in Australia, ABJJF or whatever the acronym is. But he grappled a guy from Nigeria, and I'll never forget, through the fucking singlets, right? Through the singlet, this guy oil checked him. And I was like coaching in the corner, and I'm fucking like, Raf, what's he fucking doing? What's he doing? Somebody make him stop. It was one of the worst fucking things I've ever seen, dude. It was so bad. Such a bad oil check in front of everyone. It was one of the most brutal things I've ever seen, and my heart goes out to Blake. Yeah, it was pretty fucking brutal, man. Yeah, so no, I've never been oil checked, but that was bad. Cooper Marion says, you ever seen Neil Malence's video on the butt drag? His demo partner is just cringing the whole video. Yeah, but butt drag is bad, right? But I'm talking about a fucking oil check, the likes of which you have never seen. Like, it would be banned on. You wouldn't be able to watch that shit on YouTube. That oil check. It was fucking brutal, you know. No, the ref ended up calling it. Actually, the ref ended up, because it wasn't a butt drag, right, or a butt scoop, or any. A butt drag. It wasn't that. It was just our guy. I won't keep naming the poor fellow, but he shot a double leg. And for those that are kind of familiar with wrestling, the Nigerian dude was on his bum trying to do like an Olympic lift, kind of like the Korean did to, was it Kyle Sanderson? Yeah, kind of like he's trying to like lift him like that, and then he couldn't. Blake kind of sprawled out, and the dude just stuck his fingers into him, and bad things happen because good people let them, man. That's all I'm going to say. And I screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed. And I wasn't even part of it. Cooper Marion says, Neil spends half the video explaining oil checks and the worst ones he's seen. Yeah, nah, that's fucked up. Heath Perry says, would you rather be half your height or double your weight? If I'm healthy, double my weight. So yeah, no, the oil checks are bad, dude. And yeah, I'm not gonna. There have been some fucking brutal ones that I've seen, dude. So yeah. Anyways, anyways, I was gonna bring one up, but if anyone's a fan of Grange TV, go back and look over some of the clips and shit. There's one that I saw, and I'm not gonna bring up now. But yeah. Anyways, Sammy, do you have anything to add? You ever been oil checked, Sammy?
No, thank God. But I'm all for it if you want to add the Turkish oil wrestling at your gym. You'll probably get a few more members, but I don't know. Maybe after this chat, I'll just sit out the live rounds. So
no, man, it's brutal. That oil wrestling's fucking hard. Cooper Marion says, I remember some debris on someone's finger. Nah, dude, that's fucking brutal. Like the way that guy did that was like fucking crazy, dude. I've never seen anything like it. And there was no rhyme or fucking reason to do it the way he did it. You know what I mean? There was no rhyme or reason. And what scares me the most about that oil check was the fluidity with which he did it. He was just so fucking confident with it. And so it lends me to believe that that guy practices that. And his team must practice it. And I don't fucking understand. Let's say you practice it because it's consistency over like, you know, training super hard. So let's say you train 5 days a week, 2 a days, you know, on the national team or whatever. Let's say you practice it for 5 minutes every session. All right. That's 5 times 5 is 25 minutes of you being oil checked and then you oil checking someone else. This is a lot of oil checking that you would have had to practice. It's crazy. Archie says, Fab, I was told Brian Ortega's BJJ is really fundamental, and then there are so many new techniques being developed every day. What are your thoughts on basic fundamental BJJ? I think, I don't think BJJ, first of all, I don't think BJJ is anything special that, like people go, with BJJ, it's like this and that. I don't think there's, like, new techniques being invented or anything like that. I think that, like, they've probably been done before. I believe that how people develop them, like how the more people doing it now with the mass media and the ability to chain things together, it's kind of like music. Like you don't invent new notes and whatnot. They just the way you put them together. You know what I mean? I think that's the important thing. And when you're beginning your jiu-jitsu journey or your grappling journey or your fucking anything at all, I think your fundamentals are very, very, very important. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. I think Ortega's a guy that's done jiu-jitsu for a very long time, and he did it during his formative years. So his body moves like someone that's had a symbiotic relationship with jiu-jitsu. What are your thoughts on that, Sammy? Because you started jiu-jitsu as a grown man, like in your 30s, mid-30s. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think if you have that solid fundamental and solid basics, then I don't know, the kind of cool stuff can come afterwards. But if you don't have that fundamental stuff, then you're kind of lost anyway. So,
and it's pretty much across the board. Like I think with anything, like Sam is young Sammy here is a mathematician. And you can't just jump into whatever, I don't know, chaos theory or whatever. If you can't count, I think this is a problem. And it's the same with jiu-jitsu. If you can't do like a forward roll or whatever. And then there's like, I believe things as well. You have to understand like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? Is it, if you understand like jiu-jitsu should be and still is a martial art, and you understand like these are basic positions we want to be in, that are safe and that are better positions for combat, I think that's going to help you develop your game massively, massively. That isn't to say you don't want to have a good guard, but you need to think, what am I doing in this guard? I should be trying to improve my position by either sweeping or submitting someone, These, not even the techniques, these are fundamental concepts that I think you have to understand. You want to get on top and stay on top. If you're on the bottom, you want to have a great guard that allows you to submit or sweep. You know, that's what I think. And I think a lot of times people don't even know, like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know what I mean? Oh, this is cool. I'm going to try and do this and or do that, but they don't understand like what that position's for, you know. And then you're watching guys like, I don't know, you go, oh, but Craig Jones starts on his back, for example. I'm just making this up. And I think, you know, Craig Jones. And Craig Jones would sweep you so fucking quick if he wanted to, or he'll submit you, or he'll make you choke yourself. Like, he'll do whatever he wants to you. So he's doing that against other freaks of nature. Like, he would get on top of you easily if he wanted to. Like, there's no question about that. So fundamentals are very, very important, but not just the technical fundamentals, like understanding what are we trying to do here? What are these positions for? I think is very important. Cooper Marion says, no, Oliver Aikman says, I got oil checked one time at practice and felt extremely violated. Fuck that. I'd sit in the corner and eat a chocolate bar if they did that to me. Cooper Marion says, I agree. Bruce Buffer would still fuck Rob up. Top 3 middleweight for sure. I agree. Kenny says, I've seen some really creative stuff from Craig Jones. Guys, awesome to watch. Yeah, he's a freak of nature. But you got to understand, that's like seeing a Picasso painting and saying, I could do that. It's not the same. Like, he's not you. You know, he's not me. He's a different level, like 20 million levels above. Cooper Marion says, Nicky Ryan has got pretty good ideas usually. Cooper Marion says, man's made of rubber bands and band-aids, but he's got a good mind for how you should play jiu-jitsu compared to old school ideas. But even the old school ideas, they're still relatively modern because jiu-jitsu, grappling has been around forever, dude, forever. So even what we consider old school, it's not really old school, dude. If you look at like old catch wrestling and like judo moves, it's had pick up a book from like old combat books and that, like you start to see, oh shit, yeah, no, these moves have been around forever. They're not new moves, you know. But on that, Sammy, do you want to add anything?
No, not really.
All right. On that, guys, enjoy, and we will see you, or at least I will see you here on the stream tomorrow. And please like and subscribe if you haven't already, but join us tomorrow for the fights. And thank you so much, guys, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Take care.